Okay, so just to get started. So this first week, what we're doing today is we're talking about establishing an anchor for your meditation practice, for your formal meditation practice. We're doing this by, number one, just first understanding what that anchor is and why it's important. Number two, understanding how we're using the breath, both in the formal meditation practice and in informal, mindful moments throughout your day, or micro practices throughout your day, or just when you're noticing yourself really need it as you're facing different changes throughout the day, as you're facing different situations that might feel a little stressful or overwhelming. So we're going to talk about the qualities of the breath and how you could use it in both scenarios. And then we're going to give you a little bit more advice on how you're not only going to be anchoring, but on some different ways that you could support the breath in your formal practice. So mindfulness of the breath is the first anchor we use in meditation, and the most common anchor used in most meditation practices throughout the world, but specifically in insight meditation or mindfulness meditation practices. And we use the breath specifically to begin steadying our minds, to begin steadying the attention, our attention, and to begin steadying our emotional reactivity, to begin steadying the heart. So the breath is the most common tool used, and we use it because it's always there, right? We all have these human bodies, and there's breath moving through you, each of you right now. And I'm just seeing some of you breathe. So right now you're breathing and I'm breathing, and we're here together. And it's something that we could all connect in this moment at the same time. So we're going to start out with a short practice to kind of feel into that. Okay? All right. So I want you all to push away from your table about a foot, right? Just so you have some space around you. And then ground your feet. So if your knees are crossed or ankles are crossed, just simply uncross them and relax your hands, grounding your hands right on your lap. So instead of like holding your hands or holding on to something, just release them and let your fingers relax and feel heavy on your lap. Good. And now just close your eyes. Bring your attention firstly to the bottom of your feet. So just really noticing your feet landing on your floor, on the floor beneath you. You're kind of feeling into this part of the body from the inside out. Notice the weighted feeling there. You could even encourage your feet to feel heavier. And notice your sit bones grounded in your chair, fully supported here. And again, you could even weight the seat a little bit more. So just kind of land your energy down. Notice now your spine reaching up out of your hips. Notice the crown of the head reaching up towards the ceiling. You might even notice this gentle lift up through the sternum, up through heart center. There's almost a lightness there. Now gently move your shoulders back and down. And if you feel a lot of tension, especially in your chest, you could bring the shoulders up, back and down. And you could even do that 2 more times if that feels appropriate, especially if you're just kind of finishing your day. You've been sitting at the computer all day, just relax the shoulders. And now coming back into stillness here. Gently turn your attention now into the breath, just as it is. Just notice the body breathing. If it helps to deepen the breath a little, go ahead. Maybe even taking 2 or 3 full deep breaths. Notice the depth and texture of the breath, how the breath feels right now. Knowing that it doesn't need to feel any particular way. So whatever your experience is here is just right. And now just bring your right hand over your heart and bring your left hand on top of your right hand. And just really feel into the body breathing for a moment. Notice the aliveness here. And now just gently bow your head down, opening the eyes and letting light flood in, just keeping the gaze down for a moment. And then we'll come back into the room together. So we just feel the energy really ground in just a few minutes. We notice a shift. And if you're kind of finding a hard time to connect to that, just trust that that shift is very subtle at first. And when we start noticing that shift take place, we start like tapping into it more. So we become more familiar with what it feels like to come out of whatever you were just doing, and it was probably something busy, right? And now re-entering this different stream of calm and more presence. So now we can attend to our talk today with just a little more space, right? So just kind of feel into that for a moment. So what I mentioned earlier is that the purpose of establishing an anchor, starting with the breath, is to begin steadying the mind. So we talked a lot when we met about, just feeling kind of overwhelmed and attending to a lot of things at the same time, how we're always kind of multitasking and being pulled away from present moment just because of the frantic pace of life, because of the to-do list that never seems to kind of get done. And so these practices begin centering us and anchoring us down into right now, right? The mind needs a tool. And so we're providing that by directing the attention into the breath, all right? Why do we start with the breath? We start with the breath because the breath is the first thing that we're able to connect to in this human form. When we take our first inhale at birth, and our last exhale at death, the breath is always with us, right? And when we start establishing this more interesting kind of curiosity into what's actually happening with the breath, it provides us with this invaluable tool that we could always tap into because it's right there. So in this moment, the breath is here and it feels like this. Just notice. And now in this moment, the breath is here and it feels different. Okay, so we start to really stir up a lot of curiosity. The breath calms the system. It does that naturally. The breath is always responding to our environment. It's responding not only to the environment, but to the people around us, to the situation we're in, right? It will speed up if we're under stress as this heart starts beating. If we go into fight or flight, right, the breath will start responding because of the nervous system. Okay, so we could start looking at those cues that our body's providing and start working with it. What we also know is that the body's breathing on its own, whether or not we're paying attention to it, right? So whether or not you ever look at your breath in a mindful way, your body's breathing. So it's already happening. And just the idea of that helps to really build trust in our capacities to handle anything, right? That's where we start. So what exactly is the breath? So we're just going to talk about the breath being a conduit, a connection, a way in. And what is the breath the way in for? The breath is a conduit for oxygen, of course. So we're breathing in our environment. We're breathing fresh oxygen into every cell, saturating through the breath, through the distribution of oxygen in the system. Every exhale is a release of carbon dioxide. And so we're releasing that back into the environment. So when we're in our environments, we're literally breathing in the trees around us, the plants around us, and we're interbreathing with them. And they're breathing from the carbon dioxide that we're relaxing out. So it's this really beautiful idea. I mentioned on Monday to the other group that, you know, it's Earth Day, and it's such a beautiful concept or idea to kind of think into. Here we are breathing the trees, right? The breath is also a gateway for prana. In Eastern cultures, it's sometimes called prana, sometimes called chi. That could be spelled C-H-I or Q-I, pronounced the same. They mean the same thing. So this life force energy, it's defined as an animating life force, okay? And we've experienced this before, whether or not we've noticed. So when we see a newborn baby, a newborn healthy baby full of chi, and their skin's beautiful and their eyes glisten, right? And we see an older person who's starting to lose chi, right? My grandmother, I remember, you know, when she started getting sick, it just seemed like the life force was kind of seeping out of her at the end. We know this when we're sick, when we see ourselves in the mirror and we know that, you know, something's going on. There's more chi moving out of us than is moving in. We feel it when we're out in nature, when we're walking through the forest, when we're sitting on a beach with the fresh air, the fresh salty air. So just pause for a moment and think about how you feel when you feel most alive, right? When you're eating healthy foods, fruits and vegetables, there's a change there. We know we feel different when we enter certain environments, right? When we enter an environment that's fresh and alive and full of positive energy, it feels different. We also feel differently when we're not in that kind of environment, right? Walking into a smoky room, right? Feels different. So we already know these things intuitively, and we just start remembering that we have this connection, this wisdom inside that already knows, right? So we're just bringing that to surface. The breath is also this interbreathing entity. So we talked about that already. This interbreathing, this interconnectedness. The breath joins us. We meet here because we understand that experience together. The breath is also a direct link into the central nervous system. So we talked about how the body responds to any situation that we're in, right? So that's why we know that soldiers come back from war with severe trauma, right? Because of the situations that they were in, because of what they've experienced there, and their body holds on to it, all right? The body responds. So if we flip that over and we start talking back to the nervous system through that conduit of the breath, which is what we know connects us, then we could start talking to our nervous system in a way that's reassuring and calming just by working with the qualities of the breath, by understanding the qualities of the breath, by using the breath in a formal practice to begin supporting our systems. Okay? So how do we do that, right? That's why we're here. How do we breathe mindfully? We're going to start there because pranayama is the word for breath control, or the practice of breath control, or controlling the breath. And you could just think of it as mindful breathing for our purposes. Mindful breathing, we could tap into at any moment of the day. So when you take that customer call that, isn't pleasant, when you're dealing with a situation at work that's very challenging, when you're interacting with somebody that starts to trigger you, we could just pause in breath and come inside, grounding our energy, connecting to our center, and opening up to the experience with more trust, right? So I'd like to kind of describe these different features of working with the breath at any time. We'll also use this in the formal practice, but remember, it's not just for the formal practice. It's just to use the breath at any time, right? So I want you to sit up again for an experience, nice and tall. It's important that you're not kind of leaning back into your chair. Unless you have an injury there, if you have a back injury and you need that support, please take it. Sometimes for these classes, especially if you're working with a bodily injury or discomfort, you can roll up a towel or a sturdy pillow and place it at the low back, because that'll give you a little bit more support if you're sitting in a chair and you need that, right? But for now, just sit up nice and tall, ground your feet. Again, relax your hands and bring them on your lap, and uncross your legs, please. So grounding the feet, uncrossing the legs, uncrossing your feet. Close your eyes. And just noticing again your body here, supported in your seat, your feet firmly planted down on the floor, the spine lifting up out of the hips. Just notice that gentle lift through the sternum. Just really landing right here for this moment. You might notice some sounds of life happening around us. So just allow the sounds to kind of be there in the background, like a backdrop. And now just bring your attention into the breath gently, just encouraging the attention to land there, letting go of any thoughts, any distractions, and just coming into the breath. I'd like you to fully attend to the inhale. So notice the in-breath coming in through the nose or mouth. And then just relax the attention on the exhale. And again, just noticing and relaxing on the exhale. And take one more conscious breath with all of the attention noticing the qualities of the in-breath right now. And just relax the attention. Now turn the head down. Just opening the eyes, letting light flood in, and then returning to the room. Okay, so we just shifted our attention into the qualities of the in-breath. And I'd like you to, before I give you some of them, just if you had to describe the inhale in that experience with one word, what would it be for you? Just kind of answering that question silently, just choosing an answer that feels right. And there are qualities of the in-breath that include this freshness, right? There's an aliveness in the inhale. There's a vividness of breathing in. It kind of wakes us up. It's a wakeful feeling. All right, so we're bringing in that oxygen from the environment we're in. It's infusing your body with freshness and wakefulness. We can learn to use the qualities of the inhale to support us when we're feeling sluggish, when we're feeling tired, unmotivated, right? When we're feeling low to the ground, when we're feeling slow, that afternoon, it's about now, right? That 2 o'clock time frame, when we start reaching for the coffee to give us a little caffeine in the system, we could pause and just breathe by focusing all of the attention there, and it wakes us up. Okay, now let's look at the other side of it. So sit up nice and tall again. Good. And close your eyes. You could uncross your legs, ground your feet. Good. Thank you. Close your eyes. And just drop into your body for a moment. So I want you to visualize your body sitting on this chair in the room you're in together. Just kind of acknowledging your experience right now. Letting any sounds of life happening around us just be a backdrop. And now gently turning into the breath again, but this time focusing your attention on the exhale. So we're just allowing the body to breathe itself, and notice how your body is responding to the breath moving out. Just let the breath empty completely on these exhales, taking 1 or 2 more breaths, nice and long and deep. And now again, just dropping your head down for a moment, opening your eyes, letting the light flood back in, and returning to our talk. Very good. So here we experience the qualities of the exhale. So for a moment, just think about, what did you experience? What was the depth and texture of that exhale? What did the body do when the breath left? How did that feel for you? So if you could pick one word, kind of noticing what that was for you, what that experience was like. And here's the thing, some of you may say, well, I didn't feel anything. I didn't notice it. So I want you to be really honest if you didn't have an experience, if you thought it was difficult to connect to the breath in any way. Okay, and that's right too. That's a right answer for you right now. Okay, but with the qualities of the exhale, when we're breathing out, the whole system starts to relax. There's a relaxing quality there, a letting go. We just kind of surrender in the exhale. And the deeper we get with the practices, it's very interesting for me. I've been practicing, I've been working with, yoga and pranayama and meditation for a long time. And by developing those skills, I can notice right away when tension's building. I always get it in my thoracic spine, like up underneath my shoulders. That's where it kind of clenches on. And if I notice it, if I catch it early enough, I could just pause wherever I'm at and close my eyes, and I could breathe into that space, and I could actually feel my body releasing that tension. Okay, so this could be very, very, very potent, very powerful. When we start talking about mindfulness of the body, when we start looking at discomfort and pain in the physical body, we really work a lot here in this exhale and how powerful it is. All right, so we could direct and visualize the breath in areas that we might need it. So if it's a physical discomfort, or if it's just a mental or emotional discomfort, if we're facing a challenge, we could imagine that tension or stress just leaving, right? So I want you to kind of play with it and see how it works for you. What makes you feel connected here? Okay, and we begin working with the quality of the breath, not just in these mindful breathing moments throughout the day, but even more importantly, in our formal practices. So if we're meditating, if we sit down and we stop to meditate and ground our bodies and gently turn our attention into the breath, and we notice, wow, I'm really sleepy, right? I just am exhausted. I can't do this. Any kind of critic talk that comes up, judging kind of discussion that happens inside, we all have that inner critic. We could just focus on the inhale. Say, okay, just focus on the inhale. Bring some energy in, right? And just the opposite. If we sit to meditate and we really notice that we're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, or the mind's really busy, right? Say you have a really busy day ahead, and so as soon as you wake up, you're already started thinking about your list, right? And you notice that when you sit down in a quiet space. We'll start out by focusing on the exhale. Let it go, right? That list will still be there. Sometimes when I feel that way, I don't think I told the other groups this, so you guys are special. But sometimes when I'm feeling that way, where the mind just feels like overwhelmed with busyness and I'm having a hard time tapping in, I like to visualize like a shelf sitting next to me, right? And I imagine just putting these ideas or plans right on the shelf, like saying to myself, okay, this can wait, and this could wait, and this could wait. And right now I go inside. Right? So see what works for you, right? Just notice your experiences as they are. So how do we work with the breath in meditation? So in meditation practice, in your formal daily practice, which is what we're teaching you how to do, all right? So apart from all these methods and techniques that I'm teaching you to support yourselves as you're moving through your day in any circumstance, I want you to sit every day at the same time consistently. We're starting out by sitting for 3 to 5 minutes. And I know each of you could do it for 3 to 5 minutes. And you probably know that too, like, oh, I could do that. And that's the idea. I want you to feel really successful in these first couple of weeks. I want you to pick an amount of time that you feel some ease, that you're not feeling so overwhelmed. So for some of you, if somebody mentioned the other day, you know, I have a practice already, I do this already, and it's a much longer amount of time. Can I stick with that practice? And the answer is yes, of course. Please stick with your normal practices, but still, you know, attend these talks, because there may be some key practices or techniques or methods that you haven't learned yet that may support you in a better way, right? So 3 to 5 minutes to start for the majority of us. If you start with 3 minutes and it doesn't feel like enough, the next day I'd like you to try 5 minutes. If you go to 5 minutes and it feels like too much, then go back down to 3 minutes. Okay, so it's just up to you. You get to choose and navigate how you build this practice. It's your practice. All right. So how are we working with the breath in this practice? we are working with the breath just as it is right now, just how the breath is. And as you'll soon be able to see, every time we stop and close our eyes and look in, it will be different. You'll have a different experience. You'll notice something new, right? Something interesting, something different, something challenging, right? That's because we're always starting over in a way. The breath is always there, but it's always responding to our day, the amount of stress we're under, the amount of sleep we had, whatever we ate, whatever kind of communications we had with people, whether they were stressful or not stressful, or joyful or exciting, right? So the breath responds. So we start getting to know ourselves a little bit better. It's almost like sometimes I visualize this looking glass, right? And it's almost like you look a little deeper every time you go in. One of my teachers was telling us that he was a Buddhist monk, and he lived in Vietnam for many years under his teacher, whose name was Ajahn Chah. And this teacher's name is Jack Kornfield. He's also a psychologist, and he has really led the movement for insight meditation practices in the United States since the early 1970s. And when he was living in the monastery with Ajahn Chah, his teacher asked him, he was in silence, for lots of extended amounts of time, but for one time in particular, he was in silence for 50 days, and his only instruction from his teacher was, every day, I want you to tell me something different about the breath. And that was it. That's all he did, was look at the breath every day to identify a different quality of the breath. You could do this for the rest of your life and see different qualities of the breath. And why do we do this? Well, the breath is with us till the end, right? So we get to work with the breath in our fullness, in our vibrancy, in our aliveness, but also when we're sick, when we're tired, when our heart is broken, when we're overwhelmed, right? As life changes, the breath is always there, and we work with what we've got. So we're all in allergy season right now. And many of you may have allergies, right? And say to me, well, Jen, I can't breathe out of my nose, so I can't do this. No, you could breathe out of your mouth, right? So you could breathe out of your mouth if your nose isn't accessible, okay? If you need the breath moving in and out of the nose and mouth, that's fine, okay? If you need to lay down to breathe, if you're in severe pain, if you're sick, you could still work with the breath. So it's a tool that's always there. The challenge for practitioners of the breath, so some of you already have yoga practices, or maybe runners or hikers or bikers or skiers or whatever it is you do with your bodies, right? And you may have some work with the breath and experience working with the breath and manipulating the breath, perhaps. Like in a yoga practice, we sometimes really stretch the breath out, right, to infuse the practice. So this could be challenging for those of us that are used to manipulating the breath, because we're asked in the meditation practice not to do that. So if you notice in the beginning that you might need a few deep breaths just to drop in, that's fine, but then just let it go and let the breath be. Let the breath inform you in your practice, okay? Because the more you get to know, the more you get to experience what's there, the more it drops us into full presence, present moment awareness. So 2 cues you could use to help you in this process is, one phrase is, how is it now? How is the breath now? Okay, so you could write that down in your journal if you have it. How is the breath now? Right? And you could ask yourself that when you notice that you're not paying attention, that you've been pulled away into some thought or story, or memory or plan or sound, whatever the distraction is, and you return back into that stream of breathing, you could ask yourself again, how is the breath now? Right? Just checking in, that pausing in to see what's there. So what if you can't connect to the breath? What if it feels completely overwhelming when you go into the breath? For me personally, that was my experience when I started meditating. I would almost like hyperventilate whenever I started dropping into the breath because I had such bad allergies as a child, such bad asthma. So when I looked into the breath, it almost made me feel more anxious, right? So we could check in with the breath in different ways that might feel more supportive. All right, so sit up nice and tall again so we could look at how the breath feels right now inside the body. Close your eyes, ground your feet. And again, just dropping your attention into your body sitting here fully supported. Just providing that gentle lift through the sternum. And now coming into full attention on your breath. I'd like each of you to notice where you feel the breath inside your body the most. Where do you feel that connection of the breath coming in? So for some of you, that feeling will happen a lot for people at the nostrils. They'll just feel the sensation of wind moving in. Sometimes people feel the exhale just against that top lip as the exhale leaves the body. Some of you may experience the breath as it gathers at the back of the throat, and there's almost this swirly sensation there before the breath moves down. Some of you may notice the rise and fall of the lungs and ribs as the breath moves in and out. And some of you may notice the breath go even deeper below the navel into the softness of an open belly, just like a baby breathing. So just notice where you feel most tuned in to where the breath is in the body. And we're going to call this the touch of the breath. Again, now turn your head down, allowing the light to flood in. This is really important, just this act of bringing the head down for a moment, especially like when we're at work with the lighting, or if we're outside meditating and it's really bright out. So how are you guys feeling? Yeah, good. I see some smiles. The touch of the breath becomes really important, right? We notice the breath, we bring our attention there, but when we land in a felt sense into where is the breath right now, where is it landing inside for me, we have a place to stop and look in a deeper way. It's like, oh, it's right here, right? So I feel that expansion and contraction, or I feel it at the back of my throat, or right now I feel it at the tip of my nose. What's interesting about this process is that too will change, right? So we notice the breath at first in the beginning. It could be somewhere we could stay there with the tracking of the breath, or it could change for us during that experience of 3 to 5 minutes or 20 minutes or 40 minutes, however long you're sitting, right? Right now, just 3 to 5, okay? But what if we can't connect there? What if that still makes it too hard? What if you say to me, no, it's making me feel anxious, I can't do it, right? You could use your body in a different way. So just place your hands down on your lap just like we've been sitting with our hands down. And just close your eyes. Close your eyes and feel into your hands for a moment. Imagine looking into this part of your body from the inside out. Notice the weight of the hands here. Notice that really subtle vibration of energy. Notice the heat or texture. Notice the feet now, that weight of the feet, the weight of your sit bones. Just notice the body breathing for a moment. And now bring your right hand over heart center and your left hand on top of right hand. And just feel into the body itself breathing. We cannot separate the breath from the body. So we can work with the breath, it's right there. Just in a different way, just going in through the body. Relax your hands down, tipping your head, flooding the light in, and returning to the room. So if it becomes difficult for you at any time, because these practices, they sometimes bring up more than we expected, right? So you may be sitting and breathing and really relaxing in, and then you may feel this wash of joy, or you may feel a wash of grief, right? What I want you to do, if you notice something coming up for you, whether it's an uncomfortable sensation in the body physically, if it's an uncomfortable emotion or memory, if something like that happens, right now, I just want you to note it as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, right? As positive, negative, or neutral, whichever words feel most comfortable for you. So just name it, acknowledge it, and then return in, right? I don't want you to go deeper at this point. We're going to teach you tools and different ways of working with that stuff as we move along. But right now, it's just important to notice. Notice what's coming up and return. If it's something that's more intense that you expected, notice, name it, and return. Okay, we're trying, remember, these beginning practices, the goal is to steady ourselves, to steady the mind, to steady the attention, and to steady the heart. Okay? If you notice, if and when, not if, when you notice yourself lost, right? Oh, you find yourself in a story or a memory or a plan or idea or imagination, whatever it is, it does not mean, that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong, right? That's actually this magical moment of noticing that we're not here where we need to be in the present moment. And that's a mindful moment. That's a magical moment of where we come back into breathing and we start building this capacity to stay. We start actually changing the neural pathways in the brain to return, to be here, to stay here, right? There's this little necklace that they sell at one of the retreat centers, and it's a dog bone on the necklace, and it says sit, stay, heal. Heal, right? And that's really what we're doing. We're sitting, we're staying here, and we're healing the body and the mind and our attention, healing the heart. So it doesn't mean when you notice yourself lost, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It doesn't mean you can't do it. That is the practice. That's the practice. Even if we need to return back in 1,000 times, that's the practice. So what if that feels hard? Okay. What if we are having a really hard time working with the breath? We could get there, but we need some more support. We need some more tools. What else could you do? So there's 3 things I want you to think about doing. Number 1, you can add a whisper to the meditation. Okay, and I call it a whisper because we only want 5% of our attention on the actual whisper that we're using. So with a whisper, I mean we're adding a word or a mantra, right, that you feel motivated by, that feels you feel connected to. So it could be on the inhale, you could inhale in peace. Exhale out tension, right? Inhale strength. Exhale tension. Whatever words are meaningful to you, whatever supported words that feel right to you right now are absolutely perfect. But we only want 5% of the attention there. 95% of the attention in the anchor of the breath or the body, whatever it is you established. Does that make sense? Yeah? The second tool you could use is you can start counting the breath, right? And we're going to really work with the counting methods in the next 2 weeks. So if you don't remember how to use this, don't worry too much. You could make it really simple. So imagine if you were counting to 10 or 20. You want to choose your amount, your number before you get started. And we could count the inhale as 1, the exhale is 2, inhale is 3, exhale is 4. We could use that pattern, or we could use a different pattern, which is the one I use most frequently, which is inhaling 1 and exhaling the dissipation of 1. So I bring a visualization of 1 in my mind's eye. I like to use like a screen, like a drive-in movie screen, you know, when the numbers come up and they go away, right? So inhaling 1, exhaling 1, inhaling 2, exhaling 2. So whichever method or visualization that feels right to you, you could do. But again, there's a whisper there. The concentration is on that number, on the counting is just about 5%. And the rest is on the anchor of the breath. Okay, we're trying to steady that attention. Now the key is if you use the counting method, when you notice you're distracted for any reason, you begin again at 1, right? So you don't keep going, you just start over. And that means that you could have practices where you never get past 2, all right? Which I've had those experiences. So you could use that. So we have the whisper of the breath using mantra or word, the counting of the breath and beginning again. And the third tip for this practice in particular over the next 2 weeks is relax a little bit, right? So relax the effort a little bit. If you feel like there's too much effort, or you feel yourself striving, or it feels stressful in any way, just try to relax. It's helpful sometimes if you notice that coming up for you, that efforting, is to just smile in your meditation. Just turn the corners of your lips up. That smile kind of washes over this lightness in the practice. You feel lighter, right? Don't take yourself so seriously. I feel like that's one of my challenges personally. Sometimes I'm just too serious, right? So I want you to learn how to relax in the practice and be with yourself just as you are. And just simply return. You can't do that wrong. I promise. All right. And there's a poem that I'm going to, or it's actually not a poem, it's a quote by one of my favorite teachers. He's actually a philosopher named Alan Watts from like the 70s. And he said, The art of living is neither careless drifting on the one hand or fearful clinging to the past on the other. It consists of being sensitive to each moment, in regarding it as utterly new and unique, in having the mind open and wholly receptive. And what he's describing there is mindfulness. That's it. The art of living. Breathing is an art. Right? It's something that you could develop. It's a tool you could develop, and it becomes very powerful. So that is there for you at any time. So for the rest of the day, notice your breath. When you're driving home, pause for just a moment and notice how the breath is. Before you walk into your home, especially if you have children, or sometimes I get home and my dogs are crazy because they're excited to see me, but it feels stressful, right? Before you transition into any new moment, just pause with a few breaths. It lands you. It's in the transition always where things get a little hectic. Okay? So that's all I have for you for today. We have a few minutes left for some questions and answers. I'm going to unmute you. So if I know most of you are meeting in big groups today, so you can stay muted and just chat with me if you guys have a question. Take your time, but I'll unmute you, so you'll all be unmuted hearing each other for a moment. Okay. So if you don't have access to a speaker, you can chat in a question. So I see a beautiful engagement picture in my screen. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I see Shamokin in my screen. Any questions there, guys?
Anybody? Doesn't look like it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody from corporate or Hazleton, Tamaqua? I see a few people called in separately. Maybe not. Everybody's feeling a little more comfortable with Zoom. I wish there were emojis on the chat, right? Little thumbs up.
Where is the chat?
So if you go down, if you scroll down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see some tools pop up. And you'll see a little chat bubble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you click on that, a separate window will open and you could chat in that window. And now you guys will be calling in on your own for the rest of the training sessions. You are already registered for everything, right, with me. So if you haven't registered yet with Zoom, please do that. But once you do that the first time, Zoom will remember you as you click through the link to come in. And just remember not to participate as a audio only, or we won't be able to track you for the prizes. So I know that the first training session prizes are going to be picked soon. So I'm very excited about that. I do know what that prize is, but I don't know anything else. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, any questions, guys? I don't see any. Shamokin, did you have a question?
Can you see us? Are we audio only?
I cannot see you, but if you're on your TV, that's probably why.
Oh, okay. Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I could see you. You did. you did sign up properly.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. So just make sure, guys, that you all sign in on your sign-in sheet for Paige and get that to her so you get credit this week. I can't think of any other housekeeping items right now. Hello. So I will be ending the meeting. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. And you'll get an email from us later today with some instructions and links that will be helpful. Okay?
Thank you,
All right.
Jennifer.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.